I'm a little bit late to Big Bang Theory, but
Yeah.
yeah.
But now you can stream it all.
Oh, yeah.
I'm a fan
I
of
don't know,
it.
HBO Max, I mean, it's got all the seasons,
Nice.
every episode.
Nice.
I think we'll, all right.
So I've never seen it.
See, I haven't either. You gotta watch it.
All right, I will call to order the personnel policy and curriculum meeting, which was duly noticed on January 3rd.
Michelle?
Sorry.
Microphone?
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll call to order the Personnel Policy and Curriculum meeting, which was duly noticed on January 3rd, 2022, through posting and notification of the press in accordance with Wisconsin State Statute 1984. The safety message I prepared for tonight is, it is National Radon Safety Month, and the NSC talks about it. And the reason it's timely right now is because radon levels are higher in the winter because we're heating our homes and you wouldn't even know. And you could be breathing in higher levels. So there's actually kits that you can get, $25 and $15 kits that you can get through EPA's website sent to you that you can send back, and then kind of just do a check on it. Even if you have a system in at your house or maybe you don't, it's just something to get checked well because it's a huge lung cancer factor. So anyway, I just want to bring that up because of the season. Do you guys have anything that you wanted to bring up?
That's a great advice.
Okay, thanks. All right. Motion to adopt the January 4th, 2022 agenda.
So moved. Second?
Moved by Liz, second by Lisa. Presentation of Avid, the advanced via individual determination by Mr. Meanwelt.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. I got to stay here to be this microphone done. This is gonna be tough for me. I'm not a good stander. So, all right, I'm going to talk about Avid, and I'm not going to say advancement via individual determination, but except for that one time, because nobody Avid doesn't refer to it that way, but it is how it started. And I'm going to talk mostly about Avid Elective. I will refer to Avid school-wide a little bit, but I'm going to talk about that, and because we're going to see the highest number of students long-term likely affected, and where we're going to have to probably do the most work is going to be at our two comprehensive high schools at Craig and Parker, which is where we're going to implement Avid Elective starting next year. And I'll talk a little bit more about Avid school-wide, but we're going to do that at Rock University High School. And that's going to look a lot different, partly just due to the size, right? We're talking 70 students versus trying to implement this at a much higher level. So what is it? Gets to be the first question. So how we're going to run it and how Avid Elective works is it's really an hour a day. It's like an elective class called Avid. And the idea behind this class is to give students some school skills, right? One of the things in high school is you have to know how to do school to do well in high school. And there are some kids who just don't know they don't have that skill. They didn't grow up in a house that helped them have that skill. They weren't the type of students in middle school or elementary school where they either learned it on their own or they had teachers that helped them learn those skills. And so they're going to get additional support in Avid Elective, and that's going to look a little different. I'm going to get into some of the details later. But they're also in that elective going to need to bring some problems that they need some help solving. And part of that is to model problem solving with them of like, this is what adults do, right? And sometimes in school, as adults, we make it look like we have all the answers, right? And then, right, we all are adults and go, no, we don't have all the answers, right? And so part of that is modeling that behavior and what we expect them to do. The other part of elective is we're going to train a bunch of our staff at both at all three of those schools in some particular strategies that will work with all students, but we're going to pilot them and work with the students in Avid Elective to begin with. And I'll talk a little bit about some of our long-term hopes later on, but that's the first part. So Avid itself has some stated goals, and I'm not going to read all these to you, but it's a pretty regimented program. And one of the things, and I was just out at Franklin today because we were starting the process of identifying 8th grade students, right? That would be good for the 9th grade Avid elective. And one of the things I was talking to the Franklin 8th grade staff about is like, this is work, right? This isn't, hey, we got this program for you. It's going to make high school so fun. I'm like, yep, it will help you be successful. And I'll share some of the data that Avid has that shows it's successful, but it's work. And so we're going to identify some students that we think is a good fit, and I'll talk about what that fit is in a little bit. And then they're going to have to want to be there, right? We're not going to make them do it, right? We want them to want to be there. So the other part of Avid with these goals is there is an evaluation process. So right now, there's different roles, and I'm the district director for Avid for our district. Both Craig and Parker will have site coordinators, right? And then we'll have Avid elective teachers. And then we'll have support teachers, and we'll have tutors, and all those sorts of things to make this work. But in the long run, part of my job as a district coordinator is Avid will give me an evaluation template to say, are we doing this right? Right? What's our data look like? Are we really identifying the right students? Are we being successful? What's it look like in the long run? So it's a really regimented program. Honestly, as somebody who's been at the high school level for a while, it's probably one of the two most regimented that I'm familiar with. The other one, if you remember, Project Lead the Way is crazy regimented as well, right? Both those are very regimented programs of like, nope, and it makes sense, right? If they're going to put their name on it, like you're going to do it our way because we know our way works. And the more flexibility they give, right, the farther away they get from success. So Avid's mission talks about the opportunity gap. And so a lot of times you'll hear about achievement gaps, right? Avid is really interested in the opportunity gap of students who don't get the same opportunities because they don't have the same life circumstances, right? So maybe because of some barriers they have, maybe because of some of their home life they have, maybe because some of their past decisions they've made, that they haven't gotten the same opportunities. And so part of what we're trying to do with Avid Elective is making sure that they have rigorous opportunities that helps them be successful in post-secondary, right, once they graduate from high school. We also want to increase our teacher effectiveness. So that I'll get into some of the training that's going to happen this summer and some of the things we can do after that. And then ultimately we're after student learning, right? If we're not increasing that, if we're not getting better learners, right, then all of this just, it looks pretty good. So those are kind of the three big deals. I know they have goals and everything, but when I think about this and the training that I've been involved with, it really comes down to this is how do we give kids better opportunities, right? How do we get our staff to be better, right? And how do we increase student learning? So some data, right? So the graduation rate, right, for students in the Avid program, right, is 99% graduating from high school. Okay, the Wisconsin graduation rate hovers around 90, right, depending on the year and that sort of thing, right? So just some data that shows, right, this thing works, right, as far as creating better graduates or more often graduates. College acceptance, right? Students that are in the Avid elective, right, about 85% of them are accepted to college. In Wisconsin, of the students who apply, about 72% of them are accepted to college. Right? Again, this is one of the things we expect from students in the Avid elective. And one of our goals is to identify students in 8th grade that probably aren't thinking about going to college. Right? They're thinking, hey, I just want to get done. I don't know what I want to do in the rest of my life, but I probably can't, right, is a narrative that goes on in their head. And we want to identify who those students are and say, not only you probably can, but you will, and we're going to help. And so we believe we can do this through Avid elective and certainly match that type of college acceptance differential. And then the last thing, and when I talked about some barriers, right, if you look at educational data just in general, low socioeconomic status, right, is a pretty common correlation to a lot of things not going well for students. So with Avid, college enrollment is 46% for in the United States. 35% of students come from low-income homes end up enrolling in college, right? And with Avid, that's 46% of low-income Avid students. So is it awesome? Nope, but it's better, right? It's better. So I'll get into some of the more details, and I'll answer every question that hopefully I can once we get going, because I realize it's a lot. But I want to get into kind of some of the nitty-gritty things, so you have an understanding of kind of what it's looking like. So this is what we started doing today with our Franklin Middle School staff, and we'll start it with we'll get to the other middle schools yet this week. Start identifying students, start communicating with those families and those students, ask them to apply, that sort of thing. But it's really students who are academically in the middle, right? We're not looking for students who aren't already coming to school, right? If those students aren't coming already, right, Avid's not going to fix that, right? Because attendance is a really big deal, right? Period, it is, but it certainly is in the Avid elective. And how I stated it to the Franklin folks today was, I want you to think about students, and you think, well, if we could just, right, and then whatever that happens to be, right? And that happens a lot in schools. Like, if we could just do this, we could get him, we could get her. That's what we're going to try to do with Avid, because we're going to be able to just, because we're going to assign someone to mentor these students with very specific skills and very specific strategies. We're also not looking for students who really academically need a great deal of support, right? Not that we're not going to provide some support, but if these students are already, in the neighborhood of D students, if these students on our standardized testing are, below basic, right, we're not going to be able to raise that bar. We don't believe we can through the Avid program anyways, the supports we can offer through Avid, to get them to take some rigorous courses, which is one of our expectations. Is we do expect students in the Avid elective to eventually be taking AP courses, right? We expect that level of rigor. One of the things I told the middle school staff today is, really, you're thinking about a kid you'd stick your neck out for, right? You know what? That kid can make it. I know that kid can make it. They're not doing awesome right now. They're not doing terrible, right? That's the kid that we think fits this really well, right? And is willing to be pushed. So it's not an ask-risk program, right? It's not just homework help, right? It is much more rigorous than, oh yeah, and then you'll have a study hall and you'll have a teacher there to help you. That's not what it's going to be, right? It's going to be more work than that. And it's not for students who are already unmotivated, right? If they hate school, Avid isn't going to make them love it. So a little bit about what it is and what it isn't, okay? There are some other things. I talked before about barriers, and these are some of the barriers that sometimes some students face that make school just harder. They make it harder everywhere. So it's one of the things we're going to consider, and we're going to ask when we're trying to identify, well, what students are a good fit? Well, are some of these things happening? Now, historically, Avid started really with only one of these in mind, and that was first-generation college students. That's how it started, I believe, back in the 80s. And since then, it's kind of added, like, nope, we're really looking for students who are this in-the-middle group, who could use a little extra something. But these are other things we will consider because they're barriers to success, and data would show that they are. So what we're going to do is say, well, okay, we know that's a barrier, but we're going to give you the supports and skills so that you can overcome that barrier and you can be successful once you leave the school district of Janesville. All right, I'm not going to read all these to you either. But this is some of the things of how we're going to go through things, and I'm gonna break down Wicker in a little bit, because in education, when people hear Avid, somewhere in the next two sentences Wicker comes up. So I'm going to talk about that on the next slide. I talked a little bit about rigor. Right? We are going to expect those students to take rigorous courses. Right? It might be AP, might be some other things. It might be some Project Lead the Way courses. Right? It might be some dual enrollment courses. Right? But we are going to expect them to take that. And we're not talking about, hey, Avid is only for students who want to go to a four-year college. But we do know that the vast majority of careers out there now need some sort of education past high school. Right? So we want these students thinking, yes, we'd like you to do that, right? So that you can have a better career and have a better successful life afterwards. The courses they take, so we will schedule this real deliberately in where we place the Avid elective at both schools, and we've actually talked about that a little bit of where might that fit. And I'll talk about one of the things we have to do, which is Avid tutorial with our elective. And so it might matter where we actually place this course during the day. And we will likely start with just one section at Craig and Parker next year, partly just due to we don't want so many moving parts that we can't make it successful. Now, if we find out that our need is a lot higher, will that change? Maybe. I don't know. But right now, we're kind of stuck on one makes a lot of sense. And the feedback we've gotten from Avid and from other schools that have started it said that's probably a good idea. So that's kind of the plan. But where we place it in the schedule, and I'll show you a sample schedule a little bit as well. And it is a team process. So right now I'm talking to you about it, but there'll be site teams at both Craig and Parker, right? And then Rock U will be different because Rock U is actually we're gonna try to do some things at a smaller school level, and I'll talk a little bit about that at the end. And part of it is using data. I said that we have to evaluate our program for Avid, and we're going to need to do that with data of like, are we being successful? Are these students, right? Are they passing courses? Right? Are they showing up every day? Right? What is their feedback? Right? Do they think this is helpful? Right? What would we have to change to do? But those are the kind of the five core components or the five kind of pillars that we will make sure we get through. And this was part of what our summer training will be to make sure that our staff is comfortable with this when we're moving forward. So Wicker, because it's going to come up, I'm just telling you, it's one of the things when people talk about Avid, they talk about Wicker. And so these are strategies that our teachers are going to learn this summer. And what we will do is we will spread some of those strategies. Now these aren't like copyrighted by Avid, but they really do go hand in hand when people talk about what do people learn in Avid and what do we expect. So we'll expect our teachers to have skills in these areas, and then our students will then be able to obviously do this through modeling and through expectation. So how that's going to look is we'll have this core group at Craig and Parker of about 25 students, right, as ninth graders. Right? They're not going to spend the whole day together, right? They are all going to have the same English teacher. Right? And that English teacher is going to be trained, right, in Wicker strategies and Avid strategies and some other research-based strategies. Right? They all are going to have the elective together. Okay, so they might have second hour and third hour and fourth hour English with the same teacher, right? But eighth hour they're going to have elective together. The same thing is going to happen in social studies. If we can make that happen, math might get a little dicey, all right, because of the levels that they might be at math. So that might be a little more difficult. Math is one of those things that separates pretty fast at the ninth grade level. Science probably won't. Science is probably going to be okay for us to be able to do. But we're going to try to make sure that happens, that while they're not spending the whole day together, they do have a like schedule, if that makes sense. They have like teachers in their schedule. And the reason for that is those are the teachers we want to start with our training. We want all those teachers to have similar skills, right, and similar expectations. And Wicker is part of that. So one of the things that a long time ago when educators talked about Avid, right, they talked about Wicker and then they talked about, oh, and they got to take Cornell notes, right, which is a specific note-taking strategy, and Avid was big on it, right away. Every kid that, yeah, but I don't like it. It doesn't matter. You're taking Cornell notes, right? They have moved back from that and talked more about this of like, nope, we have some styles of note-taking we subscribe to. You will take notes, right? And this is the part I was talking to earlier, like this is rigorous. That the expectation is those students will take notes in every course, every day. And when they show up at Avid Elective, we're going to check. Did you take your notes? Why didn't you take your notes, right? And work on that. Like we're going to build habits through expectation. Not, oh yeah, you should, it'd be better for you, right? This is the thing I talked about at the start of some kids know how to do school. Well, I should take notes. You know why? I do better, right? I don't really like it, but I do better, so I do it, right? So we're going to teach kids some of the ways to do school, and this is just one of those ways, and giving them feedback on their notes, right? And not just saying you should take notes, because that happens a lot, right? If you've been in a high school classroom, it'll happen a lot of a teacher will turn on the board or do whatever. You should probably take some notes on this, right? But if you're a kid who doesn't know how to do school, you don't even know how to take notes. What do you mean? What do I write down? Everything? Do I write down everything you say? So we're going to teach them, well, what does this look like? What's a 2-column notes look like? What would you write here and here? Why are you doing that? Are you reviewing your notes? Do you know why you should review your notes? We're going to share the research why, right? Look at this. When you review your notes 3 times, you happen to remember stuff, right? It's not cramming the night before. So it's again, one of the skills we're going to expect to teach these students. So Avid Elective and Avid Tutorial, they look separate, right? They're going to happen at the same hour, if that makes sense, right? It's going to happen in the same time slot. So typically what will happen is the Avid Elective course, the Avid Elective time will happen like a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, okay? And really it's going to be that, right? Avid Elective talk is, you know, what's your binder? What's your organization look like, right? Tutorial I'll get to in a second, right? What's your notes and what kind of support do you need, right? Are you tracking your grades? What's due next, right? It really is the simplest way. I keep saying this and is how do you do school? And I'm just telling you, a lot of kids don't know how to do school. And so they're not successful for that reason. It's not because they're not smart, right? It's not that they couldn't do it. They just don't know how to do it. So they don't do it, right? Now the Avid Tutorial is a different side of things. And right now we're hopeful 2 sources to help us through this tutorial. We're going to need people to come in and be tutors. So typically what happens in high schools that do this is there's kind of two pots that they pull from. One is retired educators, right, who really don't want to sub. Right? I don't want to work all day. Oh, you want me to come in 2 days a week and just work with some kids who just in math? Yep, great, because I don't ever want to sub in English. But if you just want me to come and tutor in math, great, right? That's one pool. The other pool is education students who want to become educators, right? So this gives them an opportunity to work with students, particularly if they want to be high school educators. So what happens in the tutorial is we expect our Avid Elective kids to come in with a problem, right? What is it that you don't understand right now? And then we will walk them through, well, what are the steps to solve that, right? Because as you all know, when you leave high school, right, there isn't a teacher to go ask all the time anymore, right? That support that you had of like, I don't understand this, so I'll go talk to Mr. Mendenwald. Like, well, that doesn't always work, right? So how do you solve your own problems, right? Who can you talk to? What's the process to do that? And that's part of the Avid tutorial and how that works. So they do have different focuses. One is more structured in here's what you need to know and here's what I'm going to check. And the other one is, well, let's help you solve problems that you have, right? And let your group help do that as well. So not that this is how it will look, but this is how it could look, and this is very simplistic, okay? Like I mentioned before, right? So a student might have, math, English, science, social studies. They'll have some elective class. Maybe they'll have a study hall, right? And they'll have Avid Elective and Avid Tutorial, and that will happen the same period every day, okay? So it's a little bit, if you're like, well, how does this all work? That's kind of how it works for one student, right? The only thing that anybody else in the tutorial would be identical with, for sure, would be that 7th line, Avid Elective, Avid Tutorial, right? Everything else might shift and move in different things. And there might be some students who have the same schedule or similar schedules. Or they have English and math together, but they don't have science and social studies together. So that's a little bit of what that we intend that to look like. So what's training look like? So one is we need to train that Avid Elective teacher who's teaching these specific skills, right? Who's going to check binders, who's going to have expectations of students taking notes, who's going to talk about goal setting. Right? He's going to talk about what are success skills. He's going to talk about what are you going to do next? What's next semester look like? What's next year look like? Right? What's post secondary look like? All that. And so that's part of the training that we will do this summer. We will identify a single person to be the Avid elective teacher at both Craig and Parker. Right? But then there's a core teacher part of this. Right? And when I said, well, we would like all of them to have the same English teacher, that's the core teacher. And we will also train core teachers to say, well, we expect you, one, to understand these Wicker strategies, right? We expect you to be able to help these students with their note taking. If they're not taking notes, right? Part of your job is to yeah, I know you're supposed to be taking notes, right? Historically, what used to happen, and this is not a big thing in Avid anymore, but to give you an example of where it came from is, if you were an Avid student, right, you sat in the front row. Right? Because you were closer to the teacher. Now, that's not necessarily the case because teachers might say, you know what, it actually works better if they sit back there because then I can make this round and I can do this. So they don't do things like that. But so there's core teacher training. And ultimately, if we feel like this is being successful, we'd like to continue to offer more teachers to be trained. But the other thing is once we start getting better at this, we'll be able to provide, not the same extensive training that Avid can provide us, but we will be able to provide some training here. And one of the things just in what I have learned as a district director in the Avid network is enormous nationwide. It is really big. And so reaching out even just in our area, I was talking to the director at Sun Prairie, and Sun Prairie is building a brand new high school. Also to have some other things they're doing. Right? One of the things they're doing is they're building a training center so that she can do some training for Avid, which means because they've had this for a while and because of her expertise, we'll be able to send some of our staff to Sun Prairie instead of sending them to Minneapolis, right? So there's some things like that once you're in the network, people are really looking out for each other and helping, and people will share anything, which has been great so far. What is this going to look like at Rock U? We think it's going to be a lot more of the core teacher training than the Avid elective training because we're not going to be able to run an elective with that number of students. So Avid is right now piloting, and whether or not it's ready for next year, they haven't said, but it's piloting a small school program because not everybody is an 800, 900, 1,200 kid high school to do this. So smaller schools that want to do this have to do it differently. And so Avid has been piloting that, and we have asked that we be able to get in on that as soon as possible and that we'd be willing to pilot. So that's one of the things we're looking at. And so I can't tell you exactly how that's going to look different because Avid hasn't let us know how that's going to look different yet. But it will look different.
So is this slide Rock U or Craig and Parker?
Well, that's more Craig and Parker. That one? Nope. Next, this one?
Oh, is this? Maybe this start. Oh, okay. Sorry about that. Okay.
You jump on?
This is Rock U. Okay. Thank you.
So this is how at Parker and Craig this is going to look. Right. Next year we'll implement Avid elective for our 9th grade students. Those 9th graders the following year, 23, 24, become 10th grade. We'll have a 10th grade Avid elective. We'll have a new crop of students in the 9th grade Avid elective. Right? And we'll continue every year to add another elective, which means we're going to have to add elective teachers. Right? It might mean that it's the same teacher, probably not. Right? It might be a teacher that can take 9 and 10, right? Or maybe rotates all the way up, and so we're cohorting that. We haven't made that decision, how that looks, but it's probably going to be we're going to have to find a way to staff it a little differently. Because having one student be, yep, I teach all the Avid electives, and I have all 100 Avid elective students, probably isn't the best way for us to make this work, and it certainly isn't anything that anybody has advised us to do just yet, right? If they've said no, that's probably not the way to do it, right? Because part of the thing is if we can have at least 2 teachers doing that, then they get the collaborative effort of like, what are you seeing? What am I seeing? What works for you? What, right? That sort of thing. And so in the long run, that's where we look. In our 4th year, then we will look at, does it need to get bigger, right? Are we really comfortable and we think Avid elective is doing what we want it to do, then that's what we'll continue to do. And that is what most high schools do. right, is they stick with Avid Elective. They keep identifying students. Maybe they identify a couple sections instead of one section is where they started, right? That's what most high schools do. Some high schools say, you know what, we think this is really successful, right? So we're going to make all our kids do it, right? And everybody's going to do this stuff. Now, that sounds great, right? When you think about, well, this is research-based strategies and that sort of thing, but not every kid needs it, right? There's some kids who really, they're like, I don't need to know how to do school. I'm really successful at school. I already got these skills. Why are you giving me the skills I already got? So I'd be hesitant to say that will go school-wide. I'm much more inclined to say, let's get through next year and make it really successful, and then we'll worry about what happens after that. But that's kind of the plan right now of how this will look. So I went through a boatload of stuff, and I tried not to get really deep, but I also knew if I didn't get a little bit deep talking about a few things, like I don't think he told us anything. So shoot with your questions, and I'll do the best I can to answer questions about planning. I can't claim I'm an expert because we're not there yet. Good.
Okay, all right. It's late in the day. I got to figure out how to use the microphone.
There you go.
I think this is wonderful. The question that I had probably on page 2 or 3 as you went through the program is, do they have an Avid junior? Because when you talked about identifying 8th grade students going in 9th grade, this may sound bad when I say it, but that's almost like this is too late.
Yeah.
I mean, it's great that you're doing something,
Yep.
but do they have anything where you can identify students in the elementary where this could be incorporated into the middle school so that we're not catching them so late in the process of their educational journey with the school district?
Yeah, absolutely they do. The reason we started here is this is where most people start,
Okay.
right? And districts do have gone down. I'll give you the easiest example in the state of Wisconsin is Madison. Madison started with Avid Elective at Madison East High School in 9th grade. And now every one of their middle schools also runs Avid.
Okay. I mean, you have to start someplace.
Gotta start
so
somewhere.
I'm really happy you're starting here. It was just a question that
Nope,
popped
great
in was
question.
like, I wonder if they have like an Avid junior where they do it in the middle school.
Yeah,
so
actually it goes all the way down to elementary school.
Oh, that's good. All right. So, well, thank you. This is excellent. Thank you.
And I will tell you, because of some of the training I've had to do, so I've watched videos of some elementary kids. It's pretty outstanding. So, other questions? Yep.
Yeah, this is amazing. I love being part of the school board for reasons like this, to see and hear about amazing programs and work that you're doing. So super exciting. I had some chills, by the way, while you were talking, because this is, as a former educator, I know this is needed. One of the questions I had when you were talking about who the teachers were going to be for the elective teacher and then the core teacher, how will those teachers, will we offer this as an opportunity? Will we just tell teachers? I'm interested to know how those individuals be identified.
Yeah. So, when I talked with both Allison and Chris at the high school levels, and we talked about starting this, we're going to be pretty selective and leave it up to their judgment to ask some people to do it first, and kind of go from there. But we know that our success really does hinge on next year. We can't afford to have next year not go well, because word of mouth will be like, no, I don't want to be part of that program. I know you said it'd be good for me, but I've already heard that this and this happens there, and it's awful. So we're going to try to be really selective in who we ask to be involved, with the hopes that we're really successful, and after a while, teachers say, I want part of that because it looks like that works, and I would like to have those skills and strategies that I can use in my course so that I can be more successful.
That's great, because obviously teacher buy-in is going to be just as biggest part of the success
Absolutely.
of the program. Another thing, I don't know if it's a question so much as just a commentary. When we were talking about, wherever it is, the note-taking process, and that is particular interest to me for a number of reasons, and I think it's really great to give out that, very concrete instruction. And this is where I start to think about the students that are in our district, and they're everywhere. They're adults like this who, for whatever reason, have fallen through the cracks with some type of learning disability like dysgraphia or dyslexia. And probably these would be some of those students who would be bright kids and just aren't meeting the expectations.
Sure.
So is there ever any evaluation to try to figure out maybe what's going on? Is there something else? I want to make sure that if there's something else going on with those students, that our programs can help them, because if note taking is really important, but they have a legitimate writing disorder that just hasn't been caught, they're going to struggle with that program.
Sure.
So that's one thing I'm not necessarily asking you how that's going to be handled, but just kind of.
It's a consideration that we have to keep in mind, right?
Absolutely.
And I think that's a great example, and I appreciate that. And there's going to be more, right? There's going to be other things that we're going to see. Boy, these kids aren't being successful. I wonder why that is.
Right.
Right? How can we remove that barrier, and how can we identify what it is and do something with it?
Absolutely. Okay, so I just wanted to bring that up, but thank you. This is wonderful. I cannot wait to see where this goes.
Yeah, we're really excited about it, honestly, and so it's going to be a lot of work, but we have some excitement about it. So we're looking forward to it.
I agree. I think it was so good that, like these two, I can't wait to see like where we can take it next, and I'm eager for it to be in middle school too, because I really feel like it needs to. I think we really need to have something, at least for our 8th graders, as they get ready to handle a harder class, harder curriculum in high school, where they're taking an AP freshman year sometimes, and so I would like to see how we can get it incorporated in middle school, maybe before high school wide. Get some strategies down to the middle school. Is there a PD tied to Wicker for all teachers?
Well, so when I talked about, eventually we'll be able to provide some of our own training. That's
Right.
one of the things that eventually we'll be able to do, right? So right now we will train our team. We'll have site teams, and everybody's going to get a real similar training. Be a little bit different for core teachers, because they're going to get, our English core teachers are going to get a little bit of some English specific stuff, and our math core teacher is going to get some specific math, and then our Avid elective teacher is going to get something a little bit different yet because of some of the expectations there. However, once we have better training, we'll be able to provide some of those strategy trainings on our own to our staff, and that would be our intent, is that once we get comfortable enough to be able to use them, so that we could ask questions and we can answer questions and be better at it, that we'll get to that point.
How long? What is the best guess you have on that? Would it be?
I'm gonna give you an answer I hate giving, but I don't know.
Okay.
I could give you an answer, but I'd be making it up.
Yeah. Because I would eventually even I don't know if there's online resources or after school program we could do for because there's some kids who could definitely. I mean, we just have to teach them how. Like you said, they don't know how to be good students, but they are really smart. I think that, yeah, this was great. Thank you for doing this, and yeah, I can't wait to see how fast and far you can take it.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Good job.
I'll just stay up.
Oh, all right then. Oh yes, presentation of high school pathways.
I'll let you do that, so I don't screw it up. Okay, so I'm going to try to keep this somewhat simple, honestly, because it's I don't know what people know about pathways. I know we've been talking about them, and so I'm gonna. I don't mean to make it so simplistic and be like, that wasn't my intent. My intent was to start from the beginning, all right, of kind of where these came from. So pathways come from career clusters, right? So back in the late 80s, early 90s, the U.S. Department of Education started really looking seriously at what does career and technical education look like in the United States, and had a variety of committees and organizations and all kinds of acronyms thrown out. Eventually, what came out of that are 16 career clusters that are used nationwide. And they're organized by common themes, and almost every high school course guide you see anywhere has got career clusters in them some way, shape, or form, has some mentioning of them, right? These are 16 large career areas that you can find interest in. So that's where it starts, right? This is the if you're thinking of a cascading effect type of thing, that's the top tier, okay? So if you're saying, well, I don't even understand what you're talking about with that, so here's some of them, right? If you've looked at our course guide, right, like, oh yeah, I guess I did see those in there, right? So this is where you get to talking about really broad areas in careers, really broad, right? You start looking at those of like, oh, well, so what in education training? Well, everything from being a corporate trainer to being a kindergarten teacher, to being a college professor, to being a online educator, to all those sorts of things, right? And here's the rest of the list. So there's the 16, the career clusters. So how do pathways fit in? Well, because those are so broad, we want to start narrowing that down. Now, we're not going to be able to write a pathway and look at a pathway for every single career. It's just not possible. There's way too many of them. But what they will do is start to allow us to create a sequence of courses that get kids to what they could do, possibly post-secondary, but maybe they don't even need post-secondary, right? Maybe they just need to take specific courses in high school, and that will allow them to do some things. And I'll show you some examples later on in some slides. But it also looks at, well, should I be doing some things that are work-based learning, right? If I want to go into HVAC, I probably should find a way to get on the house build, right? So that I could do that, right? So I've got some work-based learning. Should I take some dual enrollment classes? Would that be helpful for me? Right? If I want to go into some specific areas in healthcare, would there be some dual enrollment courses in healthcare that would, at the very least, right? The worst case scenario, I find out I hate healthcare. What a great thing to find out when you're 17, right? And not when you're 27. And then, are there organizations? So we have some really strong organizations at both of our comprehensive high schools and also at some of our charter schools that allow kids to explore a little more, whether it's our DECA programs, whether it's our FFA program, right? What are some ways that kids can just say, well, what else is out there? How do I get connected with other students who have similar interests? How do I get connected with other organizations, with businesses that allow me to be interested? So that's part of the pathway. The pathway is, these are all things on your path to where you want to go, right? It's not just about what courses do you take, although that's part of it, but are there other experiences that you should get? So that's part of the pathway. So let's take health science, right? The health science is this big cluster, right? Of the 16, health science is one of them, right? And you can start breaking the cluster down into these pathways. Well, how as a student, right, do I navigate to get into those pathways? Now, some of them might have very similar things, but I'll point out a few things that are different. Right? So if I'm going to go into something like the therapeutic pathway, right, it's likely going to take me into some courses that are going to look a lot like nursing, right? A lot like things that are in patient care. But if I'm going to health informatics, right, that's really the data behind it. So bioinformatics is actually an enormous field right now if you think about things like 23andMe, right? It's all about data. It's all about collecting data and finding out what we can do with it and how we can make better decisions with it, right? The same at other organizations of tracking. You think that Epic doesn't look at health information, right? You bet they are. That's what they do, right? Is looking at information. So, how can we best get kids to figure out, well, what I want to do if I want to go in that area? So regionally, what's happened is the Department of Public Instruction has worked with businesses and colleges and technical colleges to say, well, regionally, what are some of the major needs? For us, all right, we're in what's called the MAD-REP region, right? And for us, what's been identified is patient care, digital technology, advanced manufacturing, construction. Those are the greatest needs in this general area, going from about Dane County to almost Milwaukee, right? Kind of that whole area is the greatest need. And part of the reason they did this, not that there aren't other areas of the state that need these, right? But these were identified needs here. And it's a way to split up the state so that all these regions aren't working on the exact same thing. And then people can share some information out, right? So when schools in this area are developing construction pathways, right? And I work at the Green Bay School District. I don't have to start from scratch, right? I can go look at some websites, call down and talk to some people and say, hey, what'd you do with your construction pathway? What's this, this, and this, and this, right? So that's part of the reasoning behind the regionality of it. But also because there are some regional differences in the kind of jobs that are there. So I'm gonna, there's 4 different pathways that I have in here for you, and I'm really just gonna stop. I'll let you look at them, but I'm not gonna read through every one of these. I'm gonna spend a little more time on the patient care one, which is the second one for you, or I think that's page 9 for you, and just talk about what some of these things and what they mean. So if you see at the very top, and I realize it's somewhat small, but the very top talks about, well, what can I do with a high school diploma? Right, so I don't have to go to school past high school to do. Here's some of the things I can do. Now, it might mean that I have to have some specific courses in high school or some experiences to do that, right? Or maybe a certification to do that, right? And then the next talks about, well, what about a technical diploma? What kind of careers and jobs could I have with that? Okay, and then it gets into apprenticeship, associate degrees, and then bachelor's degrees and beyond, right? And then breaks it down into everything from direct care, right, to nursing, behavioral health, and diagnostic services. Now, so this is part of what our pathway will look like for patient care. On the flip side of this, right, which isn't there because we're not done with it, right, is, well, what do things like student organizations look like in health and patient care in Janesville? Because it's going to look different in Janesville, right, than it will in Orfordville, right, than it will in New Berlin. And what does our course sequence look like? What are courses? Now, what will happen is direct care, nursing, behavioral health, and diagnostic services, there'll be some overlap. There'll be some courses that make sense in all of them. And then there'll be some courses that doesn't make sense in all of them, right? So we're going to need to tease some of that out so that when families are looking at, well, what should I do? I know I want to go into into healthcare. Well, that's really big. What do you want to do in healthcare, right? Because it's way different, right? In certain places, way different being in direct care, right, and then being in diagnostics. Well, I'm not sure. Well, then let's take classes that fit in both, right, until you can figure that out. And maybe you never figure it out in high school. Okay. But at least you've taken and gotten some experiences with that, and then you figure out the rest post-secondary. Also looking at, well, should you have some work-based learning experiences? In healthcare, that gets a little tougher, right, without having a CNA. You might have to have some volunteer experiences, right, to do some things that way. Is there any organizations you can be involved with, student organizations, right? And so that's what the backside of this will look like for students. Will be will look Janesville specific, if that makes sense. The front side of this is going to look a lot like this, right? It's going to be, yep, these are courses, and this is the work that has been done regionally to help districts out. So that's a little bit of what a pathway looks like. And like I said, I gave you some examples. I'm just not going to go through each one in detail. You can take a look and see kind of how those break down. And it's a lot of information. It's really good information and it's helpful to have, but it's a lot. So we have to find ways that we can help families navigate that without just adding to the confusion. And I'm going to get to one of the ways that we're going to explore to do that as early as next year in a little bit. So another thing that we're working on is looking at pathways differently, and it's core pathways. And I'm going to use one specific example before I talk about these, and that's social studies. Right? We offer a lot of different social studies classes at both of our comprehensive high schools. Right? But what's the path you should take to get through if you want to do particular things? Well, if I want to go to college, what makes sense for me to do? Right? And we really haven't defined that in the past. We've just said, well, you need this many credits, right? And then take whatever you want, right? And, we've defined some things that you got to take English 9, 10, 11, right? But then what happens next, and what do I want to do? Is it just because of what I want to do? And that gets to these 3 things: is what do our students need, right, in graduation and beyond, right? What are core electives? And by core elective, I mean courses in English, science, social studies, and math that are really elective courses. They're not, so it might be a literature course, right? In social studies, which has a lot of core electives, right? It might be something that's a particular time in history, right? It might be sociology, it might be psychology, something like that. But we need to define, like, what's guaranteed? What can we guarantee that when you're a Janesville graduate, that you had this knowledge and skills, right? And so it's another part of Pathways. It's not going to look anything like the previous 4 pages. It will be used a little bit more internally, but it is one of the, I didn't want to leave that out when I was talking about Pathways, because it is another thing we're working on. So I didn't want to make sure, I wanted to make sure that at some time or another, if it comes up and we're talking about, hey, here's why we're adding courses or cutting courses in the core because of our core pathways, you're like, well, you never told us anything about this, right? So it is one of the things we will work on as well. So this is tough to see on this, but here's an example, and I didn't come up with this example. I stole this from another district, but this is one of the things they do to help organize, right, clusters and pathways so that when you're looking at course guides and you're looking at making decisions, you say, well, that makes sense. So I should be taking these courses. I don't have to look through and page through, right, pathway after pathway after pathway. I can start looking up like, oh, I want to be in this area. Oh, I got to take this. Yeah, I've taken those courses. That's great. Oh, I haven't taken this. And now I can start looking at pathways and getting specific. So part of what we need to do is we need to get our pathway work done so that we can get our course guide to be much easier to use for families so that they can be making decisions, not making decisions based on, well, this is what my girlfriend is taking, so that's where I'm going, right? They're making decisions on, well, this is I know I want to be in this pathway, right? And maybe they don't know that. Maybe they're going back and I just know I want to be in education. And I'm not sure what, but I love being in education. Okay, what courses should you be taking then? And so we need to do a better job of organizing that. And it's not that anybody's done anything wrong. It's with some of the work coming out with pathways, there's maybe a few places that have led the way on this that we can start borrowing from. We don't have to recreate the wheel on this. And this is just one example that, whether ours looks like something like this next year, I don't know, but it will look different than it currently does. And hopefully it will be easier for families to use. So that's kind of how we're going to incorporate that into some big picture things. So that's all I had on pathways. I'm happy to answer questions if.
I do have a comment. So thank you. This is good. I would say I have a 9th grader currently, and one of the struggles that we had last year was our child was at a rise last year for part of the year, and so wasn't like in the environment during course registration. And I'm sure that there is support that's given. It was a funny year last year. Let's just say that for a lot of people. And I know as a parent and one that I graduated from Craig, and I have a lot of friends from here. I really had to reach out to a lot of different parents and families to ask for feedback on what class should my student take and what about this and honors this. And so, as you're talking about, we want to improve this for families. I think that's really valuable that you are, tuning into that, particularly for those 8th graders who are looking at it and really aren't sure. Not everyone has a network of parents that know which classes to take. And that was something that I was really mindful of because there are plenty of people and students that just were probably floundering and had no idea. Honors class, this or that, or how many, is it too much? And so as we're processing that, that's something I think is really important to consider as well. And then another thing, what about the students? I'm thinking I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life when I was a freshman, a sophomore. I knew I was going to college, but I didn't really know. And I really figured that out in college. So while I think Pathways is great and great for exploration, how are we being mindful of supporting students that still maybe they don't know that they want to be an IT specialist? So that's something that I am mindful of too.
Yeah, so it's, I guess part of that is twofold, and part of it's part of our academic and career planning. So we do try to get that in front of students on a regular basis. And that's a challenge everywhere. That's not a Janesville thing. I can't say I knew what I wanted to do in 10th grade, and I wasn't too interested in anybody telling me to think about it, right? So
Okay, I'm
that's
going to
a
interrupt
challenge.
you because then you can come to my house
Okay.
and talk to my junior who doesn't know what he wants to do yet.
Yeah, and part of that's okay. I you know, I think I was telling Allison this recently. The new term in at the collegiate level. So the number one major in college, you all know, right? It's multi-interested, right? Which it does. So that is new. That is new, and it is the old undecided. But that's the reality of it, right? Is these students are multi-interested, and it is really hard to make decisions when there's, right? There's so many more opportunities for kids now than there was when I was their age. And so it is hard, but we do try to do that, and we do need to make sure that our staff overall are engaging in those conversations of, you know, what do you want to do with your leave and how can I help? It is a challenge, and I'm not saying we're perfect at it and we can get better at it, but we are trying, and that's part of how we do it is through our academic and career planning, and we try to use Zello partly because everybody uses Zello, and you know, that's not perfect. But it's got a lot of information. It's just making sure we take the time to do it and making sure we're engaging students in that process in a meaningful way.
Yeah, and I would just add, I agree. I think it's something that we have to be mindful of because there are kids that don't know and we don't want them to feel like, well, I'm gonna pick this and I have to stay in this track in high school, because this is what I'm supposed to do. You know, we do still want it to be exploration, but we also want to have some sort of guidance too, so that, you know, just sitting with your child and trying to say, okay, well, if you don't know what you want to do, even having more information about what might be the best social studies elective, or do you want to try a business or marketing, and so it's helping teachers and our student services staff continue to help coach and support kids too. But there are teachers that will share that that's a fear. I don't want kids to feel trapped either. So I think it's a great opportunity to help our kids, you know, in guiding them and selecting courses. But in everything, you have to be mindful of students' needs and making sure that they don't feel that way.
This is, again, really good work. Can you make sure Denise has both of these presentations to attach to next week's board meeting agenda for the PPC overview electronically? Because Avid was in the paper today. Well, they both were in the paper today, but
Paper today. I didn't realize they were going to be in the paper today. They
Yeah.
called because they saw the agenda. And
yeah. So it would just be good for all the board to have, and plus I'm going to speak to, obviously, in the overview, but what's the timing on getting this out?
All I can tell you is we're working pretty hard at it. It's a little more tedious work than we anticipated.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm not making light of it. Just like realistically, like when will it be?
We're hopeful that at the very least we can have our course guide more pathway friendly, even if we don't have our pathways completely done. So next year, I would anticipate our course guide will look different and incorporate some pathway work to it. Can we have all our pathways done? I will tell you that I would anticipate the 4 that I shared. I would anticipate those will be done.
Right. Okay. That's what I meant. Those 4.
But we got a lot more work to do. And it's
Right. Well, I'm just thinking like all 3 of us have high schoolers doing the course selection right now, so it's not even until next January that it's even going to be utilized by us. Right, yes, and then mine after that, because I got to get this nailed down too. So no, this is really good stuff, and I mean I just love the work because it paints a picture for the student, you know. I think adding I hope that you're going to have a lot of resources to help you add those things to the back, the student opportunities, Elevate, DECA, whatever all that stuff. I hope that you have enough resources to really make that robust. And then obviously it can be a living document that you can always add to as things in the district change. So thank you for this. And yeah, I'm excited for the rest of the board to learn about it. Did you have anything?
Yeah, I just want to give Chris a pat on the back. I mean, as you can see, when we have the right leadership in place, right, these are things that we've been slowly working on, right? Prior to his arrival, but we're finally really out of the gate now, and there's progress being made, and whether that's closing opportunity gaps for kids or doing a better job of really creating clear pathways for kids. These are things that happen in districts. These are tightly aligned with your promises, the board's promises, right, of college, career, and life ready. These things are tightly aligned with that work. And so thank you, frankly, to you guys as a board for having the wisdom to have good evidence-based, strategic plan targets that we work toward, and for supporting, some of the shuffling and adjusting that we've done with staffing positions over the last couple of years to make sure that we have the right people in the right positions to move these agendas forward. So kudos to Chris and to you guys for the good vision there.
Yeah, Chris, you actually done, it's wonderful work. I also like to add about Avid, the promise of knowing every student by name, strength, and need. That goes to that as well. So it's very good foundational work. Commissioner Arter, did you have anything so far? Okay, thank you. Didn't want you to think I forgot about you. All right, thank you, Chris. 1.6, presentation on proposed paraprofessional pay structure by Mr. Garner. Hi.
I'm gonna, so that sounds bigger than what I'm actually gonna do tonight. So, just so you know.
Title?
Yeah, it sounds nice, but.
Got your attention.
Yeah,
right.
Flashy titles, so.
Oh, yeah, here.
So, as you know, we've been studying the idea of looking at my job is to look at all of our staff groups and make sure that we're competitive with our neighbors, whether that's Evansville, Edgerton, Milton, our competitive districts, right? And as you well know, the workplace market is very competitive right now. And we want to try to recruit and retain the current staff that we do have. As you know, and maybe you don't know this, but the history in terms of the paraprofessional structure, that got adopted back when we had PPS. That was modified to look at beginning, developing, and effective in terms of as well as the rates. So we do have pay ranges for paraprofessionals, but one of the things that you'll notice if you look at that structure is a flat structure. So what happens is if I'm a paraprofessional, I get hired this year at a current rate. Say our lowest rate right now is $13.64. All right, I get a roughly 2% raise for the next 10 years. My hourly wage should be 20% higher than when I started. However, it's flat. So anybody starting 10 years from now in the same position will get the same pay that I have, because that'll be where the range is. That makes sense. So we started to look at that. We also looked at years ago, my first year as a director of HR, we did increase the paraprofessional pay to make it competitive, at least mid-range, okay? And what we're finding is that we are falling behind. So I've created 4 tenets that I wanted your feedback, or at least to inform you of how we're going to base our creation of this pay structure. It's going to include competitive wages. So currently, just so you're aware, amongst 13 districts that are surround our areas, Beloit, Turner, Delvin, Darien, Edgerton, Elkhorn, all those, Whitewater, Stoughton, we are currently, our average starting pay is $1.06 below the average of those districts, of 13 districts. For those who actually give premium pay, so some districts give premium pay for certain paraprofessional positions because of different skills needed, we are $1.75 below the hourly wage. So we are not competitive currently when it comes to our paraprofessionals, and we feel the need to do something about that. So that's why I present these tenets to you tonight, just for your feedback. So we're going to make sure that the wages are competitive, and we've done a market analysis, and I have that information. We're going to create a ladder structure so that we can honor longevity and experience. One of the things that you start to see, and I certainly have heard feedback this year, is because of the flat structure, those people who have been here and committed to Janesville for 10, 15 years, are concerned because people getting hired this year are making the same rate or close to it. And so what we want to do is create a step ladder system that honors that longevity and experience. And we have created experience bands due to the network disruption. We had it all created. However, we lost it. So we are going to have to rebuild. Hence, the title tonight was very catchy, but it's not, it's not what you thought it was. So, but we are planning to do a ladder structure, and that would require then a placement and a cost to that as well. And I'll be working with Dan McCrae on that to determine the cost and where exactly and when exactly we can fit that cost into our budget and how we implement the structure. So there's a lot of work yet to be done, but I wanted to make sure you guys were informed of the tenets. We are going to explore again premium for certain paraprofessional classifications, and the reason why simply the needs of their students are becoming more and more complicated. The skills that are demanded of our paraprofessionals are certainly higher level than what they were, honestly, when this structure was created even 10 years ago. And so we are looking at creating that premium. If you do your research, districts are about 50-50. Some offer premiums, some don't. We did at one point, but when we redid the structure years ago, we took that out because there was some argument to be made that, you know, if I'm a paraprofessional classroom, I might be dealing with Johnny here who has certain needs, but then my typical job is not dealing with Johnny. Well, we're going to look at that premium regardless. And then finally, we're going to look at ongoing learning via PD. So much like the teacher structure, it's not going to be nearly as complicated as the teacher structure, but we are going to tie PD to moving up that ladder because obviously, as we well know through this virtual time and COVID times, we've had to demand more of our paraprofessionals in terms of technical skill and knowledge. Plus, thanks to these wonderful people here, we have more online resources instead of regular textbooks in the locker room or in the lockers. So we have online, and so those skills are needed and the training's needed. So we're going to tie it to that, and it helps motivate people to continue to learn, which is one of the factors that we've heard over and over again from our paraprofessionals. So I'm just informing you, board, tonight of the upcoming structure that we're going to at least put together. But there's a lot of work yet to be done because we have to recreate the structure. I have to work with Dan in terms of the financial impact of that, and then we have to determine when we want to implement the structure. Questions?
Not a question, but just a comment or two. I really do like these four, so thank you for putting thought and effort into it. And I sincerely apologize that you have to recreate the wheel because it's something none of us like to do. But I really especially like that ladder structure because as school board members, we received a lot of emails from paraprofessionals, and I first want to say thank you to all those paraprofessionals that actually emailed us. It provided great insight to those that might not be familiar as school board members, what they do in an educational setting. I think Elizabeth and I can attest to what they do. My classroom at Kennedy was right next to one of those individuals, and they, kudos is all I can say.
Yep.
So their emails meant a lot to me, and I just wanted to say thank you for that. So I really, truly want to thank you for putting this together and going forward with it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
No, just thank you. I mean, I agree. I don't have questions. I did take notes based on what I was hearing, and because I wasn't sure what your presentation was going to be about, you covered everything. So I was super happy to see this, and to any paraprofessional that's listening, I mean, I just value you so much. And not only as a teacher, but I've done extensive volunteering in our district over the last 10 years, and I have seen firsthand some of the, sometimes heroic, saving an entire school from being in a soft lockdown because of behaviors that are happening, and it's paraprofessionals often that are helping calm emotions. And so this is absolutely needed. It can't come soon enough. So let's get going. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. That was one of my notes too, is I want to thank all the people who wrote us because, man, they're some of the most valued people that we have on staff. And, we know we don't take lightly with the work that they do every day. So, they're very much valued and we know we have to take care of them. I think actually in 2016 when I came on board is when we did the first round, and then so I'm glad that we're revisiting it, and it sounds like you've got a really good go forward plan that can't come soon enough. So thank you for this.
Sure.
And do you have anything else on this one, Mr. Ardrey? Or all right. All right.
Copious notes over there, Mark.
Yeah, 1.7 sub pay rate update.
All right, so much like our paraprofessionals, our substitute teachers are basically the glues of the district, and we depend on them each and every day. It's no secret that our sub fill rates are low. We currently average 67.5% over this year, but I can tell you that it's slowly gone down as obviously COVID takes its toll on everyone. That strain that's felt in the building and the stress that's felt in the building by the teachers and staff continues to build and grow as we don't have enough staff to fill the positions, or we have to pull people within the buildings if they're not filled, right? We need to supervise kids, we need to teach kids. And so this is one of those things that we have to kind of keep up with the Joneses a little bit in terms of being competitive and making sure that we maintain at least a wage that would attract substitutes. And I'm not thinking, I've talked to Superintendent Pufo about this. It's my belief that we're not going to necessarily pull new people in. We might with this change in pay, but what we will do, I'm hoping, is that the current people that we do have will have a choice, and they'll see that our choice is more lucrative possibly. And so that's what we want to do, is keep them who we have. And hopefully we recruit more, and we will work to do that. But that's ultimately what we want to do. In addition to that, so what you'll see is we're recommending to change the per diem rate of currently $140 per day to $150 per day. And that also then, if they do the PD, they also get that $10 extra per day if they sub. So again, remember, they get the $160. So if they complete PD, which we do have them on frontline, they can get that extra $10. We also want to reward the majority of our long-term substitute teachers are people who are committed to Janesville and typically sub in Janesville. And honestly, if you're a long-term teacher, you're teaching, you're doing the work at night, you're doing the phone calls, you're dealing with kids, parents, staff, all of that. You're really doing a full-time teaching position. So what we've done is we're going to recommend that we change our long-term rate to $225 per day up from $200. And the reason for that is roughly 1/90th of our first year teacher salary, if that makes sense. And so it's the lowest tier on our structure, but we're doing it 190. The teacher's contract's 190 days. So we're dividing that in a per diem rate, comes out to roughly $225. So that's our recommendation. I've been working with Dan McRae and his team to kind of cost out and what is that budget impact. And I can't say enough about his team. They've been working with me to kind of cost that out. This year, we anticipate that we won't see a need to add additional funds to the sub budget based on the fill rates. So what, you know what I'm saying? So we budget for 100%, but we're only at 67% right now. And so we should be coming under budget, and this additional add-on, when I bring it to the board next Tuesday, should not impact our budget a whole lot, frankly. It's hard to breathe through these masks, sorry about that. And so that's one thing, but we have to look towards the future, and there may be additional funds. Again, it all depends on our fill rate. Our highest level fill rate in the last 3 years was 82%. And that's when we did the big push, and we went to the mall and we tried to recruit people. We had at movies, we had an ad, so 82%. And so if that does happen, that could require significant funds, but it's unpredictable. We don't know exactly how that will look, but I just want to make sure you're aware and open to the idea that that could require additional funds to that budget if in fact we do hit that 82%, which I hope we do, frankly. because then it's less stress on staff. It's better for our kids, and our kids will learn. So, questions?
So you're gonna present next Tuesday, the full,
Yes.
all the numbers, everything?
Essentially, you're going to hear the same thing.
Yeah,
I'll have a little bit more detail about possible costing.
yeah, and then effective, you're gonna administration's
Hopefully
gonna
January
request.
3rd, so we could go retroactive, but we could also do. I think we should go retroactive personally.
And I think we're gonna also be asked, someone will ask, because I was thinking it, like, what is the current sub pay rate of neighboring districts, if we can have that just to show, like, see, now we're gonna be competitive.
So, yeah, and I have that. The issue is that many districts right now, and I'll do the calling, we'll do the calls. Many
Just a
districts-
couple, you know what I mean,
Sure,
like,
okay.
border.
Yeah, well, I can tell you right now,
Okay.
Floyd Turner is
Yeah.
is looking at $150 a day
Uh-huh,
currently.
Okay.
And their long term is 190th of their,
Parkview's already 150.
are they?
like, what's Milton?
Milton's 165 on one end and it's 125 on the other.
Okay,
So,
I think they've increased theirs.
okay.
yeah. So again,
That'd be the one, like, I'm just thinking if people are living in Janesville, we're gonna lose them to Milton.
sure. And
The-
I can pull that information
Yeah,
together.
okay.
I think I remember the superintendent.
Oh, 140. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
All right, thank you. And then staffing and substitute update.
Yeah. This is per our conversation at our last PTC meeting. This is the chart. I've included the percentages and a comparison from November to January. And it's double-sided. So currently, if you look at January's numbers, we've had a total number of 167 teacher postings. We currently have 7 positions open, and we filled 90. That means with them, we filled 96% of those postings, which is excellent. It's much better than where we started. It tends to level out, obviously, over time. Now, I will tell you that teacher number is kind of swayed by the mid-year retirements. And so, just so you know, that's kind of impacted the number this year or this month. But again, 160 positions have been filled at 96%. We currently have 4 long-term positions open. We've had a total of 18. We've filled 14. And you can go on down the line. I don't need to read that necessarily for you, but you'll notice, if you look at the November list and the percentages, we are improving in certain areas. Some of these are new positions, so like administrative and support staff, there have been some changes and requests for those. Again, mid-year resignations, those types of things that we are working with. Any questions?
Thank you for this.
Sure.
It's good. It's very helpful to keep a pulse on.
Yeah.
All right. Announcements and updates. The only one I have is I do have a dual signed board request to discuss mask optional for middle and high. That is with Kathy. So I was hoping she would be here tonight to discuss that a little bit and when it could be potentially put on the agenda. I know Milton is doing that on Monday. I don't have any other ones. Greg, you're all good? And nobody else has anything? All right. And then our next meeting, so we meet, I think it's the first Tuesday, to discuss topics. If there's anything that you guys want on there that you want to, I know we'll want to keep Avid coming back in future meetings and the pathways and all that good work. So if there's any topic that you hear about or you want to learn more about, we can definitely do that. So, all right. I think we are adjourned.